What's up, guys? So this week we had Rachel Morley on to discuss her latest album and just a good conversation about worship and what that looks like and stuff like that. But our video file got corrupted, so it's just an audio file. So if you don't want to watch on YouTube, head over to iTunes, Spotify, wherever you watch or listen to podcasts, and find us there. All right, thanks, guys.
Welcome back to the Things Young Church podcast. My name is Derry. I'm your main host. This is Ethan, and he's the co-host. And this is Rachel. She's our guest today.
The main host.
Yeah, the main host.
The star of the show.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
We'll finally have people watch again because she's
wow,
on again.
Yes.
Yeah, it's been a long time since we've had a lot of watchers.
Yeah.
So
we really only have you on so we can get views.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's why we're
Using me.
Views.
Very cool. Love that.
I mean,
love to be used.
It's
featured used.
We like to be careful of vocabulary here.
It's fine.
Sharing
I'm
platforms.
also using you for no.
It's all fun.
Yeah. Usually we have a little thing we started doing in the beginning of the episode that we're not going to do now because we left it out.
Do a little skip.
Well, Derry got me a Christmas gift of a Joel Osteen box.
Oh,
that's
wow.
an affirmation box. And so we listen to a daily affirmation and then joke about it and laugh about it.
Aww.
Like one of them was,
do it.
we don't have it here, and it's in the other.
Should we make one up?
Well, one of the things he said was like, he's like, you have the blood,
DNA.
You have the DNA of a winner, yeah,
Wow.
of a victor in you.
Yeah.
Does that feel good though?
I
I
just thought it was so fun.
I like it.
because he's like, you are a child of God. You have the DNA of God in you. You have the DNA of a winner. And I was like,
He's so freaking goofy.
but he's not being satirical.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
I do have the DNA of a winner, so.
It's true. It's just super
Personally,
cringy, at
yeah.
the same time.
But nice to hear, you know? Like, that's what I want to hear the first thing I wake up. I am a winner. You're right.
You have the DNA of a winner. When you get married every day, you wake up and your husband just rolls over and you go, you have the DNA of a winner.
Yes. That's when I'll know.
I'm not gonna tell my kids goodnight stories or lullabies. I'm only
The
gonna
DNA of a winner.
memorize the affirmations.
Yes. Good. Post them everywhere.
Yep.
Here, I'll do an experiment. One of the kids will do Joel Osteen affirmations. The other I'll do John MacArthur.
Oh!
Who
Just
succeeds?
pit them against each other from the beginning.
We'll see which child.
Debate.
Yeah.
Good.
But thanks for joining the show today. We have Rachel Morley on. As you can see, she's released a new album. It's called Every Drop.
Yes.
Right there on the screen for you to see, and it's really good. Really excited to listen to it a couple times, and
wow.
I really like this. What's the last song's name? I remember I was supposed to memorize it.
Lift my eyes.
Well, the one that was like,
oh,
we were talking about the blood of the lamb.
purified.
Purified. I like that one a lot.
Wow.
That one's great.
Good.
Laura doesn't
Oh,
like it
thank
too.
you.
Laura likes it too.
Aww,
We listened
I
together.
love
She's
it.
like, I love this. She's like,
Wow.
I think she was saying, is it true that part came out of a spontaneous moment?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that was Easter 2020. So we were like streaming. So it was like in a little tiny room streaming our Easter service, and I forget what song it came out of, but it just like got really silent in the room and just felt the presence of the Lord so strong, and just like I am very intentional about walking through like Good Friday and Easter and like the symbolism, the timeline, all that stuff, and like celebrating it. And I just had all of the visualizations like in my head and thinking about like, you know, if I was there and like beholding like the Lamb of God and like looking at what he'd done and stuff, and then boom bang.
Cool.
Nice.
Fell out of my mouth, and that's what
Yeah.
it's like.
Yeah, so I don't have a phone on me to look up the lyrics, but I don't know if you memorized all the lyrics. I know
Can you sing it right now for us,
Yeah,
actually?
We actually have a piano.
Oh,
Bust it out.
Cut the stream. That's enough.
Going home.
I thought about bringing a guitar as a joke, and I was like, I don't think she plays guitar.
No.
No.
Not for
Do
real.
you do public speaking? You're saying you taught a little bit before you came here?
I do, yes. So I am on leadership for a school called Kingdom Living. Similar vibes to YWAM, just not mission focused. And then, so I teach about 3 times a month in that, and then I speak at my church like once every 2 months-ish. Yeah.
Nice. What would you say is the difference for you? Because you're in front of people a lot, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
What's the difference for you? Because we teach a little bit. I lead worship sometimes. We have a podcast. So there's like different levels of like weirdness of people watching you and being in front of people, whether it's like directly or indirectly. what would you say is the difference for you between like those mediums? Like whether it's being on the show or if it's like teaching or if it's leading worship, is there a big difference for you or is it kind of the same no matter what?
That's a good question. I feel like, to be honest with you, I feel like I like smaller rooms a lot less. Just because it feels so much more vulnerable. Because it's like, ooh, I can see all your faces, I know all your names, and I probably will see you all again. You know?
And it's more like, and you will pick up on any mistake I might make. Or is that part of it, or are you not thinking about that?
I don't really care.
So you're the blood of a winner. You're like,
I have the DNA of a winner. I don't make mistakes personally, but no, I don't know. I think because I've been on stages like my whole life, that doesn't bother me at all. I actually feel a lot more comfortable on a stage than off, which sounds really weird because that's usually not the case. But I feel like it's just more, I just know what to do. Versus in like a one-on-one conversation, ADHD, all things just like run wild, and it's just like, because it's just so much effort to like pay attention. You know what I mean? But then it's like if I'm on a stage, like, this sounds terrible. It's just like less effort to connect. And I've talked to a lot of like worship leaders who lead for like churches of like 10,000 a week kind of thing, and they always talk about like it's so much harder to lead a small room than a big room because like a big room kind of like leads itself, and they show up expectant and they show up like ready to go, and they're like feeding off the energy of all the other people. But like a small room, it's like on you to set the atmosphere, and like you have to like till the hard soil like yourself instead of like people coming already ready for that. So I think it kind of depends. I think I like both but it just kind of depends. I don't know. If I had to like choose, I'd prefer like, I mean, not like stadiums. That would probably make me so nervous. But like a small room just is so much more. You know, if I was leading worship for like 3 people in a room, that feels like so much.
Yeah.
You know?
Does it feel easier when you know them really well and you have been friends with them for a while?
Yeah. I feel like, yeah. I mean, sorta. Because I don't know. I guess it kind of depends. I don't really do that very often, of like leading worship for my friends in a room necessarily.
I guess that'd be It probably wouldn't be called leading worship if you were just with your friends. It'd probably just be worshiping.
Yeah,
right?
They're not like, oh, worship leader Rachel. Leader. No.
They're like, we just got coffee today.
Yeah.
Stop
They're
that.
like, you're not that cool. No, but I think like, well, for example, like in our full-time school, we have 14 students, so it's like a pretty small group in a room that we see every day, all day. Yeah. And so like that, there's a lot of familiarity, but and there's just like a lot of trust that's built over time, because I think, I was actually talking to somebody about this today, that I think like familiarity can a lot of times like breed like dishonor or contempt. Yeah, like just like not having a value for what that person like carries or like who they actually are, versus like if you're new to knowing somebody, it's like you have such a high value for like everything that they carry and like all that they are, their giftings, all that stuff. So like I think we've hit certain points in the school where there was moments where I was like, ooh, I think we're a little too familiar with each other, and we need to take a step back and like remember like, you know, like appreciating like who the Lord's created these people to be, our leaders to be, like it's not just random people kind of thing.
So when you see that happening, how do you address it? What is your like, you see, like, how long do you let it go on before you maybe bring it up? And if you do bring it up, what is your method? Because you can't get up there and be like, you guys are being mean. You gotta stop that. You know, it probably gotta be a bit more gentle than that.
Yeah. Well, I think like, well, honestly, our students are amazing. They're wonderful, and they like really press in the Holy Spirit. So for me, this year has been like a really new kind of challenge to leadership, because I felt like as I was prepping this summer for our school, and even just like I'm the worship director at my church too, so just like prepping like for a new season of leading our teams, leading our students, I really felt the Lord asking me to just like let him do his job, you know, which like I just felt like the Lord gave me permission to just not speak up about a lot of things, and not like let things go and like excuse things and be like, great job sitting, or like something like that, but just like to
let him convict.
Yeah, and there was like several students where it was like, oof, I could just fix this thing and this thing. I just call this out, and the Lord's like, no.
And what are their names?
Yeah. So if you're
Shout
watching,
him out right now.
call them out. No, but like there were certain things like that, and I remember the Lord just saying like, no. If you convince them into it, like someone can convince them out of it. Versus like if I am the one who gives them an encounter, like that's sustainable. Like if I'm the one who speaks of it, I'm the one who leads them to the revelation. Like nobody can convince them out of it. It's like, well, you can't be like, oh, that didn't happen. It's like, well, it did. So,
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like mostly that, to be honest. Like I feel like the Holy Spirit's just made my job very easy this year, and then I've just been able to like be the one who processes. And it's been wild because there's been so many times with so many different students and people on my team where it was something I've been praying for and contending for them for months, and they'll come up to me and they'll be like, hey, I had a dream last night that and like this angel came and told me this thing, and then I felt that and I saw this thing and I feel like that's something, and I'm like, and it's the exact thing that I would have addressed in a way not as cool way that would have been just like an opinion. And so I think this year I've just like learned cultivated just such a high value for like sustainability in the Holy Spirit and not from just like a teaching of a person, because I from the get-go with our students I've just said so many times like there's an end date to this school and you will walk out of here, or like even to our worship teams I'm like maybe you'll be on this worship team for the rest of your life, I don't know, but like probably not. Like at some point you probably will move on from this, and I don't want you to think like, I don't want you to place like have your foundation be this environment, because it's a bubble. There's nothing wrong with the bubble. Like the bubble is good. Like YWAM is a bubble, and it's a beautiful, amazing greenhouse incubator bubble. I love it. I lived it.
DTS
I
language.
love it so much. But like I think that I've seen so many friends walk out of the DTS and like totally fall off the wagon with the Lord. Like friend after friend after friend who just like aren't even Christians anymore.
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah, all the time. And it frustrated me so much because I was like, what made the difference? Like, I left YWAM, and I'm like more on fire for the Lord than ever. Like, what made the difference? And I really feel like it's like, if you didn't see, like, if you didn't value the bubble for what it was and press into, like, actually receive the good things from the bubble of, like, I know this is an incubator and so I'm going to soak up all I can while I'm here, but knowing that there's an end to this. Like, you have to have both. Like, you have to know it's a short season, but you can't just be like, oh, it's a short season, so I'm just not going to invest. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
Right.
anyways, that was a lot of rambling.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
worries. We were talking before the podcast, and you were mentioning how this album, and we were talking about like how this compared to the last album you released. And so let's talk about that a bit. You said you've been working on this since like
Long time.
Easter, April,
Yes.
last year.
Yes.
Because it's January.
Whoa, that's crazy.
Almost a year.
Yeah, wild. So the first album was, they're very, very different projects. Even just like the way that the songs are written and like what they're all about Jesus, but you know what I'm saying. Like kind of, so the first album was more like a secret place album, just like more like personal devotion, like some of them can translate into like a corporate church setting, but like that wasn't really the intent of them.
Yeah.
Versus this second album is a corporate album. Like they are songs that I lead any and all of them, like in a like on a stage at a church or conference or whatever. And so just like the general vibe of them are different, but also the first album I had written all of those songs like years ago, and then I recorded them in 2020, and you know how that went. We had a podcast about it. Check it out. But yeah, and then I didn't know if that was like the only project I was going to do. It just felt like that wasn't something I regularly did at the time. So it was just like, it felt like,
You mean like write music and stuff?
Yeah. I mean, well, writing music has always been very regular, but recording it and like releasing it, I didn't know if like this is the only time I'm going to do this, or if this is like, oh, I'm going to have a million projects after this. So I was just like, oh, this is kind of like just like a side thing that I'll maybe do. And I like really trusted the opinion of like my producer, Imo Garza, and like the whole production team there. Unreal, the most amazing people, so kind, so talented, love Jesus so much. And so I like kind of took a back seat of all of that stuff. Like I gave a little opinion here and there, but my catchphrase of the process was, I don't know anything about anything. I said that like every single time. I was like, I don't know anything about anything. I literally know nothing.
They're like, tell us what you think about how we like mixed and
And I
You're like,
don't.
I don't know.
They're like, do like at the eye
Music
doctor, they're
sounds
like,
good.
do you like this option or this option? And I'm like, I literally don't hear difference.
Yeah,
I'm
like,
so sorry.
A
Like,
or B.
I can pretend to have an opinion, but just like, I think you should get your opinion. And so it was just kind of like different. And then for this album, I feel like it's been more of a personal investment on my part because I know how it works now. Like, I know the process of all of that stuff. Like, we have a really good rhythm in the studio together and stuff. So, and I wrote these songs for Jesus, like 100% always for Jesus, like whether it's in a living room or on a stage or on an album or whatever. But also knowing that it would be recorded and knowing that it was for a second album. And so I wrote them a little bit differently. So I wrote them with production in mind. And so that was very different. And then our process has been different because we kind of like figured out what my sound was, things that I liked, things that I didn't like, things that worked. And even like as far as like who listens, kind of like what they gravitated towards, what they didn't. I honestly don't care that much about that part because I want to write music that like I would listen to.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that I love the Lord through.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and there's a lot of co-writing on this album, which was really fun.
Cool.
Yeah.
Like people around you or people you brought in?
Kind of both. So my best friend, Tori Zudas, I think you guys have met her.
Yeah.
The best of the best. We write together a lot. We
Cool.
lead worship together all the time. So a lot of our spontaneous moments we end up turning into songs. And so that's been really fun. And then I had a friend from Upper Room. His name is Oren. He like helped refine some of the stuff. And then Christine DeMarco from Bethel Music, she helped refine. She actually finished Purified with me.
Oh, okay.
That is a song that we like finished in her little writing room. And then
Was that in Hawaii or did you fly around?
I was in Reading, so it was in
Oh,
California.
right. Okay,
yeah.
cool.
So when we were in there, and she had come out before, and so she asked if I wanted to write with her, and then I was like, well, I'm working on this project, so she helped me refine that, and then. Corey Miller he's a worship leader at Red Rocks, and he's the guy who sings on the album. He actually didn't write any of those songs. We were gonna write together, and then just scheduling things, time change, all the things, and I was like, well, how about you just sing on a couple of these? So it kind of like, he definitely like wrote the vocal parts he sang, and like really was super like coming alongside different things, like kind of sharpening and refining different things within the songs and stuff. For that project, which was really fun. And I guess I could just like announce this now. Didn't plan on doing this, but I do have a third album in the works.
Whoa! I was gonna ask, is there anything in the works? So
There is.
third
Yes. I have not told anybody who's not on the project yet, so I guess this is the announcement.
Wow. Amazing.
Yes, it's a live album.
Wow, cool.
So I'm very, very excited. We're actually recording it next month.
Oh, wow.
Wow, this is soon.
Yes.
Well, I guess you gotta go through all the production part and editing.
Yes. So we kind of like, so it's actually like a crazy, we kind of stumbled upon the idea, I guess, because this guy Oren, we had written a song called Redefining Good. We wrote it on Good Friday, and kind of about that concept about like how wild it is that we call that day Good Friday, you know, and like that it was like full of torment and devastation, and at the same time like the most extravagant beauty and generosity of the love of God that we could ever imagine.
Yeah.
And so we wrote a song about that, and so we were going to release that as a single, and then another one as a single that Tori and I wrote around Easter time. And then we'd also talked about like, oh, what if we did a live recording one day? And then I was like, well, what if we just combine those things and just do like a live project? And so my producer was like super jazzed about it. So it's like a full-length 10-song live album.
Cool.
Some from my first project, some from the second album, and then some new stuff as well.
Cool.
And yeah, I'm really excited. Orion is coming out, Corey is coming out, and then a bass player from Red Rocks Worship is coming out.
Cool.
So
Very cool. That's
yes,
exciting.
I'm super excited.
Yeah. So will that be, like, will you put on a show, like a concert and do it, or will it be a
No.
worship night at, like, your church or Kingdom Living?
It's going to be closed set. So it's going to be like more of like an artsy shoot kind of thing.
I
So
like
it'll be
those.
all
Are there
live.
going to be music videos then?
Yes, so it'll all be like, there'll
Love
be
that
visuals with
aesthetic.
it. Ben Cassell is one of
Oh.
the videographers
Cool.
on the
Oh, wait.
team.
He's really
Got a
making
big
secrets
team.
because he hasn't told us that at all, and he's our roommate.
I literally said secret
Sick,
to
man.
everybody.
Thanks,
I
dude.
literally told like nobody who's not on the project. So yes, so that's really exciting. And then also Zaya Worship. Do you know who that is? They're on.
Sounds familiar.
So
Oh,
they're
yeah.
So it's like Imua Garza, Tifa Garza, Tiffany Thurston, and Kamu Singh, and they're these like 4 amazing people, all pastors, worship leaders, and they've been leading worship together for like 20 years.
Wow.
And they take like normal, just like the mainstream Christian songs that are like more like the corporate church anthems, and they put them in Olelo Hawaii, like in the Hawaiian language, and then sing them. So it's like they're amazing, they're wonderful, and they're gonna be on the album as well.
Very
So
cool.
the last song, Lift My Eyes, we're gonna do. So that's when I sing the Be Thou My Vision. We're gonna do that in Hawaiian,
Cool.
and we're gonna do like. Very excited.
That's
so
awesome.
That's awesome.
yeah, so it'll be like all different arrangements of the songs, and yeah, I'm really excited.
That's
I feel like
really
more
great.
excited about this project than anything in my life. Ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just feel excited. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
So if you think you're going to record it in the next month or 2 or whatever,
Yes.
when do you think it'll be out and like ready?
We already have release dates, so
Wow.
it's like very because
Yeah,
so
that's
we
good.
want to release those singles around Easter. So it'll be 2 of the singles will come out in April, and then the full album will come out in May.
Okay.
So
Awesome. Stay tuned for that. Maybe we'll have her back on in the
maybe
springtime.
if I pass the test. Yes. So I'm
If she
excited.
doesn't bomb this episode, we'll see what happens.
Ooh, yay. Yes. Well,
Man.
I'm excited. Yes.
Yeah.
Lots in the mix. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been very fun because it's also like the whole creative process too on this one, where it's like a lot of the stuff in the studio stuff like I can't do. Like I just sit there and give my opinions, and I'm like,
Yeah.
cool, sounds good, or like, but this stuff it's like putting the teams together and like the creative vision for the project, and even like the visuals and like where it's gonna be and like who's in the room, and I've really wanted it to just be like an altar for the Lord. So I have like an intercession team that'll be there
cool.
that's like just there to just like intercede for the project and just like welcome the presence of the Lord.
I love that.
And I've just talked to everybody on the project, like everybody that's going to be in the room, whether they are like logistics, set up and clean up on the band, or like whatever it is. And I'm like, your main job is not to do your task. Your main job is to minister to the heart of God. And secondly, I hope you get a good camera shot, and I hope you sing a good song, but like your first priority is not to do this stuff. Like I don't want anybody in the room who's just a professional at stuff. Like I want people who are like priests and ministers unto the Lord first and foremost. So I'm excited. This isn't something that I feel like is very common in Hawaii, so it's like really beautiful opportunity to pioneer that here, and I believe that that's something that'll continue happening for generations here. So
Cool.
That's super exciting.
I'm excited. I'm so excited. So
So what's the writing process? Is it different every time you get a song? Do you wait for an inspiration? Do you sit down and say, I'm writing a song, and you
good question.
do it? Or is it all of it combined? Take some, leave some?
Honestly, I feel like I've been invited to come teach about writing sometimes, and I don't. Honestly, for me personally, everybody has a different style,
Absolutely.
and they're all very valid and beautiful and amazing. For me, when I teach writing, I just teach like dependency and communion with the Holy Spirit. Like for me, it's just like spending time with the Lord, and like I'm a very verbal processor, if you can't tell, and so it's literally just like music to my verbal processing usually. There's some songs where there's one album, Closer, that some of I also preference was this way as well, that for Closer I was actually in the middle of one of our Kingdom Living classes, and the whole entire song just like popped into my head, and so I like ran out to the lobby and I took my little voice and I was like, I'm coming close, and I just like
Nice.
recorded it like in like a little whisper tone in the lobby.
I do that sometimes.
And just like the whole thing, like verses, choruses, bridge, everything just came out in one thing. And they had me up for ministry music at the end, and I just played and sang it over the room, and like the whole thing just popped out. So sometimes that happens. Versus like Where I Belong that I wrote with Tori. She only co-wrote on that song because I had written it 5 times.
Wow.
So I had completely trashed the lyrics, started from scratch 5 times. And I finally was like, Tori, I need your help. My writing style is very just like, I get a million bazillion ideas, words in my head all the time. I'm very much so like, Tori is like an expert at refining. She's like, she's really good at being like, that's important, that's not. Yep, no, almost. Let's move this here and let's do that. So like, we work really well together. Also because we're best friends, so like we know each other really well. But like, I'll be like, here's 10,000 things that we can't fit in 5 syllables, and she's like, okay, well, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. You know, just like strips it down. So for Where I Belong, that's a song that also came out of a spontaneous, but just the line of like, you hold my life in the palm of your hand, and I just sing that over and over and over. And I knew that there was something special about it, but it took me months and months and months. I literally worked on it probably every day for months, and I couldn't crack the code. And then Tori came in, and in like an hour, it was like,
nice.
I'm like, okay, I should have asked you earlier.
Nice.
And then,
so,
so with that as well, you said you worked on it like every day. Do you have set aside time in your schedule when it's like, I don't know if you do this, but sometimes I'll sit down on Sunday and I'll make my whole schedule for the week, and I'll see where I have flex time and I can work on side projects, or where I have to be on, like you said before we started this, we had meetings. So is it like, every Tuesday at 2:30 I'm in the zone trying to write, or you're just like chilling at home and then you're like doing dishes, you're like, oh yeah, that could work.
Yeah, that's my vibe.
Okay.
I'm not really a planner. I barely keep a calendar. And that's just for like vital things, and then I just fly by the seat of my pants for the rest of my life, honestly. I'm just chilling. But that sounds like a good idea to schedule time. I recommend that to other people. I just like don't do it. I think also because my schedule's different every week. I don't have like I have a couple set things, but my day-to-day is like different every week because I'm juggling so many different things. Yeah. So I never really know, and I don't have a ton of free time. So I mean, I'm very intentional about like worshiping the Lord all the time, and so a lot of it comes out of those moments. But I mean, honestly, like when I sit down and worship Jesus, there's a lot of songs that have come out of me that I'm like I literally will know, like, this is the best song I've ever written, and I'm not going to hit record because I just want it to be for the Lord. And I don't want to exploit this, you know?
So there's a 4th album, but it's a really secret album.
Nobody will, and I will never know what it sounds like because I don't even remember these things. Yeah. But there's just such a temptation of, like, recording that, but I just never want to, like, prostitute the sacred, you know what I mean? Like, I never want to exploit the person of Jesus for my own gain, you know?
Prostitute the sacred, that's a good thing.
And I think, honestly, I worry about that. I don't worry about that, but I think about that almost to, not in a bad way, but just like, even with these albums, it's like really, really hard for me to want people to hear these things because they're so precious to me in the Lord that it's like, he's had to be like very firm in convicting me of like, no, this is actually corporate. Like, I'm actually getting a blessing for this to be heard by other people. Because otherwise, like, my personal, like, I would rather be in my living room loving the Lord than on a stage somewhere, you know, like, that's definitely where I lean, and that's where I, like, find it. But it's like, man, everything's an altar. Like, everything in my life, every moment of my life is an altar for him to come and be given glory. And so, yeah, it's just like his go-ahead has to be on whatever song is corporate or is personal. So
cool.
Yeah.
How would you say that between just you and God, your expression of worship to him has changed over the years? Because I know for myself, like, the way the Lord will change and grow my relationship with him is often through how I interact with him in worship, and he'll completely change it up. Like if I'm used to just like sitting in that secret place with him and like feeling his presence instantly and like hearing from him and stuff like that and worshiping him, like it'll just cut it off completely. And it'll be like, I need you to now worship me in this way. And he'll have me search for it, and then I find it, and then I figure out where that place of intimacy is again, and I dive into that place. But it looks completely different than the last one. But then he'll take me back to that too. But just like to explore the different ways that I can know him intimately. Has that changed at all for you throughout the years? Has he stretched you or anything?
Yeah, definitely. I think I was actually reading back some of my old journals last night, and even from YWAM and stuff, and that at that point in my life, like, I had come so far in freedom and relationship with Jesus. I grew up Presbyterian, hymns and pews, and so, like, there's so much beauty and value of that. Like, what a rich reverence you can get from that. For me personally, I didn't get a rich reverence. I got a really dead religious hatred for that. Like I didn't find the Lord in that. And that's
it often becomes dry like that.
Yeah. And that's not the hymn's fault. It's like
Absolutely.
I can find him in anything, you know. But for me, I think I was also like raised in like performance culture. Like I said, like I was always on the stage. I was always doing all these things, and so
worship leading or what?
Just like choir, musicals,
Okay,
all of the like gigging, all of that stuff was just like very normal for me. I've been in a choir since I was like 4 years old, so it's just I was always on the stage. I was always doing those things. So then when I started worship leading, it was just another gig for me. Like it was just like a performance, and I wasn't taught differently. Not that they promoted that, like, hey, go perform for the Lord, be really, you know, like nobody ever said that, obviously. But I received that, and I translated what I knew of being on a stage into a worship setting, and I personally polluted it. It wasn't something that was taught to me.
If that's all your experience that you are coming from, it would make sense that when you start, that's your mode to fall back on.
Yeah. Yeah, and obviously, like, so when I really encountered, like, the reality of Jesus, like, the person of Jesus, not the idea of Jesus, it was in, like, a little classroom. I think I might have told this story last time I was on here, but my friends kept inviting me to these worship nights, and I was like, no, I was really burnt out. I was going through a really tough season, and I ended up going one night, and they just put on a YouTube video, and I was so offended. I was like, how is this worship? Like, where's the band? Where's the lights? Where's the stage? Like, this is the worship night you wanted me to come to? Okay. And but I got rocked by the Lord, and it was like the first notable time I felt the presence of God, like the actual manifest presence of God in the room. And I hadn't cried in 3 years at that point. It was a tough season, and I just broke in that moment. I started sobbing, and I just like everything changed. And it was actually, they played King of My Heart, and Stephanie Gretzinger was singing it, and I'd never heard of spontaneous worship. I'd never heard of any of those things. So it was like I had heard of, like, you know, either performance, like you do this song, or like hymns and pews performance kind of thing. I'd never seen like freedom in worship, or like being able to like actually have anything like that. I didn't even know that existed. And I remember she went off into the spontaneous, and she was just saying like, "You'll never fall off of your throne," and just went on and on with that. And I was going through such a hard time. Just saying like, "You've been God a long time. He knows what he's doing in you when you can't see it, when you don't believe it. He's good." And I literally wrote down in my journal. I remember so clearly. I wrote down, "I have no idea what this is, but I was made for this." And something was just like deposited into me where I was like, that is worship. Like, that's how you worship the Lord. And not that you can't worship the Lord. Like I said, like you can worship the Lord through hymns. And like, there's a hymn on my album, you know? I love hymns. Like, so beautiful. Such rich language. But I had just never seen love in that. Like, I'd never seen love in the Lord in that. And like, the new covenant is love, not law. And so it's like, it just like awakened me this new thing. So I think like, definitely over the years, from like transforming of like, I didn't even understand what worship was. And in these worship nights, I remember a moment when the Lord so clearly, I was in the back of the room, and it was my first prophetic word. I didn't even know what a prophetic word was. I had never heard of that in my life. And this guy, do you guys know CJ?
From
the Cayman Islands, CJ? Yeah. So he went to my college in Denver, so random, and he walked up to me.
He went to Kona for YWAM? That's CJ?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
Such a small world. So I was like in the back of this classroom, and there was this really messy worship night going on, and I was like a little offended, but also loved it so much. I was like, clearly people had never touched an instrument in their life. I was like, who gave them a guitar? But then
and what are their names?
Yeah, no idea. But I was just like, wow, this is freedom. And it was like in this academic building, like the middle of the night, like people were just hungry for the Lord. Yeah, it was so beautiful. And anyway, CJ beelined for me, and he was like, hey, can I give you a word? And I literally, like, I knew so little about the prophetic. I literally thought, like, did you, like, look in a dictionary, like, pick one? Like, a word. Like, give me a word. Like, what do you mean, give me a word? And I was like,
funny.
I literally,
cuts
like,
it out, gives it
I was like, I literally didn't know. I was like, what? And he
Your
was like,
word is.
he said, if it's all right, like, he was like, I feel God's love for you, and if it's all right, I want to just speak on behalf of the Father's voice over you. And I was like, okay, sure, like, I'm a Presbyterian, are you sure?
You're like, that
And,
doesn't happen. That doesn't
like,
happen anymore.
I've never heard of that. Like, I like, even in the spiritual gift stuff, just a side note, I literally thought the gift of tongues was just, like, that you learned languages quickly. Like, I didn't know that.
Oh.
I'd never heard of speaking in tongues.
Yeah.
Never, ever, ever. And I thought interpretation of tongues was that you were, like, an interpreter on the mission field.
Oh.
Which maybe, I don't know, but, like, I just didn't, I didn't even know, I didn't know, I had never heard the word Pentecostal before. I'd never, you know what I mean? Like, I'd never heard charismatic. I'd never heard of any of these things.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like I was like, I hear that and I don't agree with it. I just, like, I had no grid for that. And anyways, he gave me this word, and it was, like, just so, it was just a word of the love of God over my life. And I got so rocked, and I heard the Lord so clearly start to speak to me, almost as if it was, like, somebody whispering in my ear. And the Lord said, you don't know how to worship me.
Whoa.
And I was like, I'm a worship arts major. And I was like, clearly wrong number. This doesn't work for me. No, and I saw this vision of the Lord coming, and he like showed me this vision of like me, that I had built like a Tower of Babel up to what I thought was God, and that I had like performed my way up to God as if like I could earn something from him. And I saw this just like wrecking ball like whack through it, and then this rubble, I saw the person of Jesus like walk in the rubble, and I was again deeply offended. I was like, if there's one thing I know about Jesus, is he's too holy for that, like cannot touch my dirt. And he sat in the rubble in this vision. And he said, like, I never asked for towers. I never asked for castles. Like, I just asked for a home to rest with you.
Wow.
And he said, I'm going to teach you how to worship. And this just started this journey of, like, learning just communion with Jesus. Learning, like, just, you know, secret place stuff, or, you know, whether in a crowded room or, like, by myself in my little dorm room or in my car or whatever. I started learning the Lord. And as like this real, actual living God, and learning the presence of the Holy Spirit alive in me, and I was the place that he wanted to rest. And I think like from there, once I learned that, then I know that worship is just like anything I do unto him. You know, like the good stuff and the bad stuff is just like what I do unto him. And like to grieve into him is worship. To be doubtful into him it can be worship. And
Interesting,
yeah, and I think, like, that really transformed it. So, even looking back at my journey, even my YWAM journals, it's, like, so proper, like, such proper language of, like, because I just, you know, I didn't, and then it's gotten just, like, more conversational, and, like, actually teach a class in our school about learning the tone of voice of God, and like, through like, learning his character embedded in his voice, like, not just what he's saying, but, like, how he's saying it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's something like, you know, obviously if you're like, that's such a real thing in actual conversation. Like I could be like, you know, if I just say the word okay, I'd be like, okay, and that means something totally different.
Right.
I'm like, okay, you know, like totally
Yeah.
different. So it's like, if we're just like looking at the voice of God as just like, here's what he says, but I haven't attached it to his nature and like the testimonies of his faithfulness, and like, okay, he came through for me in this thing, so like he's not angry with me here, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think it's really evident even in my understanding of the voice of God and my understanding of his nature. And the more I learn to love him, and the more I learn about him, and the more I understand scripture, and the more I understand, you know, who he is, it's like transformed the way that I love him, because like I love what he loves, you know. And I think something I was very convicted about this past year is he said, if you want to look like me, you have to love what I love. And it was in the context of, like, being really tired of people and just, like, getting really burnt out from, like, just people. And just, like, you know, and the Lord's like, no, I actually enjoy you in every moment. And he would, like, point to these people I was so annoyed with, and he's like, I've never not enjoyed that person.
Wow.
And if you want to look like me, you have to love what I love, and I love them. And so just, like, even that, you know, like, loving what he loves, and knowing that it's, like, that's what the whole song Preference is about, like not worshiping our preference anymore, like not
That's
worshiping
good.
like if you love hymns, that's amazing. But that's not the only way that the Lord likes to be loved.
Yeah.
Hymns were created like way after Jesus' time. You know, people always think like, let's go back to hymns. I'm like, Jesus didn't sing hymns. Like, what is that? Like, hymns are amazing and beautiful, but you know what I'm saying. That's just an example.
I think I read this thing. Well, I know I read it, but I think it's about hymns. I'm pretty sure the history is right. But there was the Christians were upset because the younger Christians were bringing in music from the bars into worship, and then the conservative older generation was like, we can't get this out, and like the whole time we're like, well, what music are you thinking of? And the reader's like asking like, okay, probably like, you know, electric guitar and drums around, you know, and then they're like, well, actually, you keep reading, it's like, this is about hymns. You know, when hymns first entered the church, they weren't well received because it was like, oh, that's what they
bar music.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because now we look at them as like the holy ones, and like, and now you have like contemporary Christian music coming out. And have you heard of Gable Price?
Yes.
And like, so like he has this song. I think "Not Safe" is like my favorite song by him, and it just starts really heavy, saying "Seated in the heavenlies and the holy, holy, worthy, worthy." It's like really hard music where it's like a big drums, big electric guitar, and that is like received by the older generations like, that's not good. We don't do that. It's like so interesting to think about what worship will then look like when we're that age. You know, how are we going to learn from the past generations, or are we going to be the people who are like, you have to have a contemporary. Maybe it's going to be K-pop worship. Who knows what it's going to look like? I personally hope not.
Oh, Lord, I bless it. I don't want it. I think there's a quote by, oh, man. I forget his name.
Oh man, we don't.
Shoot, Ray Hughes. Do you guys know who Ray Hughes is?
No.
Precious,
that's
amazing.
Kind of funny though, because both of those words have to do with light.
Wow.
Ray Hughes.
Ray Hughes. You're right. Anyways, he's awesome, and he's this old school worship leader, and he has this amazing talk about innovation, and he says. It's in context of like talking about these things and how worship has changed through generations, and how it's like each generation, you know, like they pioneer into something new and then they get calloused when other generations want to come and pioneer something new. Yeah. And he says, how arrogant is it to think that we know all there is to know about a boundless God. Yeah. And I was like, dang, like that's so true. Like how arrogant of me to think that I would know based on my personal opinions and experiences and preferences. Like that I would be arrogant enough to say like that's not God, or God doesn't like that. Sorry, I'm not God. Like that's literally where the line came from, of like from that song Where I Belong. Like you are God and I am not. Like it's just like a song of surrender. Like it seems so simple and like dumb to say, of like, you know, it's like, okay, who out there thinks they're God? Like, raise your hand. Like, nobody's gonna be like, yeah, I'm God, you know? Maybe, hopefully not.
We act like it a lot.
But it's like our actions, it's like, it's like this song that I would sing to myself over and over and over and over and over to make my mind give lordship to Jesus and not my opinions or not my whatever I was like boxing the Lord into, or boxing, like, I don't want to do this. Like, I don't want, and it actually came out of not wanting to stay here originally. Like, I was like wanting to go. And any time I would just feel like stir crazy island fever, I would just start singing that. Like, you are God and I am not.
Interesting.
And like, just this song of like surrender too. But yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Where do you feel like worship, maybe you don't have like a view of this a lot, but maybe in like the American church today, or the West church, that's like what the context we have. Where do you think worship is going towards? If you don't have an opinion, totally fine too.
I do have a lot of opinions. I always have an opinion about anything.
That's good.
Yes, if you want an opinion about anything, just ask me. My prayer in my lifetime is actually like kind of where the song Purified came out of, and Christine DeMarco and I, like, what we shaped it into being was based on the fact that we both are people who, I'm really praying for purity to be restored back into the worship movement, that it's not about ladder climbing, and it's not about denominationalism, it's not about territorialism, it's not about being the next big thing, and if I could just get onto a Maverick City collaboration, if I could just, you know, whatever, like, that's disgusting. That is so gross. If that happens and it's out of an overflow of your love for Jesus, then that's amazing. If he puts you in those rooms, that's amazing. But I don't want to touch something that's not from him, you know? Like, what is that unto? Like, is that, like, get over yourself. And I think, like, the worship movement has become so polluted because it's become, like, a career, and it's become a show. And again, there's nothing wrong with excellence, and there's nothing wrong with being paid for what
Absolutely.
you're doing.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome. But writing a song for the sake of it being a hit versus like if that's awesome if that's what you're doing,
Lord, right?
but if it's a worship song,
Right.
if it's a song for Jesus, like I just am a really big believer of like what something is made from is what it will produce. So it's like if it's produced in genuine love for the Lord, then like people will love the Lord in it. And it's interesting to even see that through my first and second album and stuff, and the testimonies have come because it's like even the specific healing testimonies that I've heard from people are things that I was actually struggling with personally. Like chronic migraines. I get testimonies about that constantly. Where people will listen to specifically whatever it costs. They'll listen to whatever it costs and their migraines go away. And the cycle of chronic migraines literally stops. And they're like, I've never had a migraine again after I've heard your song. Which is so wild. And because I had crippling migraines every single day, all day long, like when I wrote that song. And like things that I was literally hospitalized for, people are getting healed from listening to my music. Like specific things. And so that's just one example. But even just like those things where it's like, if you want people to be hyped up and you produce a song in hype, then yeah, you can hype a room with a lot of songs. Yeah. But like if you want to move people into loving the Lord, like you need to be moved by the Lord. Yeah. Like how can you lead somebody where you're not even at, you know? Yeah. Like you can't lead somebody into something that you don't know about. Like you have no business doing that. And God can use anything. And so he can even use a song that was, comes from a drunk place. But I think my desire is just to see that worship leaders, whether recording artists or just at churches, that they would just purely love the Lord, and that this just like one thing mentality of like Psalm 27 where David's talking about my enemies surround me, my he goes through this whole list of like insane, like if you actually think about what he's talking about, it's crazy. Like his family's abandoned him, like he's like famine and war and all these things, and he thinks he's gonna die. And in Psalm 27:4, after listing all these things, he said, but the one thing I ask and that I will seek is to dwell in the house of the Lord, to inquire in his temple, and to behold the beauty of the Lord for all the days of my life. Yeah. Whoa! Like, his solution was to cry out for the presence of God, for the person of Jesus, to like be with him in his temple, to speak with him, to behold him. And then it goes on to talk about more things of all the craziness, and then in the end it said, I would have despaired had I not believed that I would see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Yeah. And it's like when David needed deliverance, he cried out for the reality and the presence of God, and that he hoped, that he had a foundation of hope. And anyways, all that to say, but just like that mentality of like he is our foundation, he is like the mentality of like the one thing. My church talks about that a lot. The one thing. That's also in Luke 10:42 when Mary is Mary and Martha, and Jesus said, Mary has found the one thing most worthy, and it will not be taken away from her. And it's talking about resting at the feet of Jesus. And I think that a lot of times people think that the one thing mentality is like ignorant of problems. Like, okay, well, there is, this or that or the other. Like, there is these social injustices. There is these things in the church. There is these abuses. There is these whatever. And I think something I like to explain to people is like the one thing mentality is not ignorant of other things. It just it's not saying that there's only one thing going on. It's just saying that there's only one solution. Like Jesus, the person of Jesus, he's a one-size-fits-all solution to any problem you could ever face, to anything that you could ever desire, to any longing that you ever want fulfilled. It's Jesus. Yeah. It's from Jesus and for him and through him. And so, I think just that people would build him a throne. What is that verse in Psalms that talks about like, anyways, you can do a little Bible homework, find whatever that verse that is about, like that we build him a throne, on our praises, that he inhabits the praises of his people. It's in several places in the Psalms, but like corporately and individually, that it's like if I'm building him a throne on my life, and you are, then when we come together and we love the Lord, even on a podcast or in a worship setting or whatever it is, then it's like we get to build him a bigger throne. That in the greater measure of the presence of God would rest on our life. Yeah. The greater measure of the fullness of the person of Jesus would be made manifest in my life, through my life, like on earth as it is in heaven. So, anyways,
Absolutely.
I could keep going on, but
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. You can't
That's
keep going.
amazing.
It's like the story
Yeah.
of history, though, is
Yeah.
us trying to like grab the light and bring it back to us, like shining on us instead of shining on
Yes.
the Lord, which is what worship
Yeah.
and everything is. It's every
Yeah.
teacher, everybody that has a spotlight, that has power, always tries to
Yeah.
bring it and make it about them.
Yeah.
It's like every church father, not every church father, but a lot of church fathers try to pull the light to them.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of the popes from throughout history, which was most of history, pull the light onto them and were
Yeah.
corrupt, right?
Yeah.
And now we see worship leaders, we see pastors. It's so
Yeah.
easy to want to just have that platform and make it
Yeah.
about us and think we're still okay between us and the
Yeah.
Lord, like because we're still talking about it, like we still have the knowledge of it, maybe we're still even worshiping, but we've brought the light onto us and we're exalting ourselves instead of exalting the Lord.
Yeah.
It's so easy to do,
Yeah.
even just subconsciously.
Yeah. And I think just like, oh man, I have so many opinions about it. I think too, it's just like we've bred this church culture of just like instant gratification and of like spoon feeding milk to people over and over and over and over and over, and it's like we've created this like fat, lazy, lactose intolerant church that's just like the bride is just, you know, more, you know, feed me, where it's like none of that is sustainable.
Yeah.
Like man, a pastor can't sustain you. Like you know, and I use this term a lot of like a conference junkie, where it's like you're just like, you know, the next hype, the next thing, like I gotta get the next hit, I gotta get the next whatever, I gotta like, oh, I'm feeling low, I better go to this conference, oh, I'm feeling low, I better read this book, I better get this podcast, I better, you know, whatever. And it's like, man, that literally cannot sustain you at all. Like that won't sustain you. Like you have to have your own relationship with Jesus. Like leaders are amazing, small groups amazing, church communities amazing. Like I hope that people are plugged in. Like we need those things. Yeah. But it's not a substitute for the person of Jesus, for the person of the Holy Spirit. Like, man, and I keep saying like the person of, because it's like, you know, we talk about, oh, we need Jesus, we need, and people just think of like, oh, an idea and a feeling or whatever. But it's like, no, like Jesus is, and you know, we were talking about that chorus of like the look at this I'm saying for my sin, you know, like to look at him, to behold him, that he's like a real God. He's a real man that lived and died for me, and to know the reality of the person of Jesus and to be sustained in him. Like I need him. Like, I am completely, and I think even just this past year I've been learning the beauty and value of weakness and dependency and neediness, and that's something I've always been repulsed by and thought was disgusting and wrong and bad, and but it's like I can't ignore the fact in scripture that Jesus talks about he's talked about in the context of like his strength is made perfect in my weakness. That's offensive to me. And like he uses the foolish things to shame the wise and the weak things to confound the strong. And I literally did this study where I literally like looked through the entire Bible of like all the verses about weakness and about dependency and about need, and I'm like, dang it, like I am fighting for the wrong team here. I'm thinking like I need to muster up my own strength, and I'm trying, like I'm fighting so hard to muster up some kind of strength that he doesn't even rest on. I'm like, dang, that's a losing battle. Like that's stupid. That's literally wasting my life. Whereas if I just gave him, like I am dust without him. Like I am nothing without him. And I know that, you know, obviously we know that, but it's like I need to remind myself of that constantly, that like I'm literally nothing without him. Like in him I have no lack, but without him I have every lack, you know? And so I think the church needs to learn dependency. And I think even, you know, you look at the concept of like, you know, the comparison, the imagery of like the bride of Christ and the bridegroom, and that all through the New Testament and stuff, and in the Old Testament, but just like that imagery of that we are his bride, you know. And I think even it's no wonder why we have such a confused relationship with Jesus when you look at like our confused understanding of even marriage in this culture, where it's like, you know, it's very independent of like, I don't need that. You know, we're seeing way less people get married and all of these things where it's just like this, like, okay, I'm going to do my thing and you're going to do your thing, and I have a need from you and I have a need from you and whatever, you know, like you do the, you know, all of this stuff, and so many divorce rates and like all this just like me culture of like, how can you serve me? How can you love me? I'm a queen. I'm a whatever. I'm a blah, blah, blah. And it's like, man, if we viewed marriage as this place of mutual dependency and need for each other, and like a beautiful opportunity to like lean into each other, to serve one another. I think we would even see that filter into the church, because I think this like has polluted church culture also, of like it feels wrong to need anything or anyone. You know, I'm so independent, but it's like, man, my hyper independence has been the death of me. Like, it has never brought me life. It has always devastated me. And now I'm learning like the beauty of healthy, not codependency, but healthy dependency on my healthy community, but mostly on the person of Jesus. And I think if the church knew that, understand that, preach that more, then we wouldn't have a lot of the problems that we have, because it wouldn't be like devastating to somebody when a pastor fails or whatever. It's like, yeah, it's a person. What did you think? You know, like.
Yeah. Have you listened to the Rise and Fall of Marcel?
No.
Oh, it's kind of. I think he hasn't. Derek hasn't either.
I will one day.
It's kind of touching about this subject of the hyper dependence of people and the not wanting to ask for help, or the maybe in some cases not being willing to receive help, and how this church grew from really small to became a mega church and practically overnight like imploded, right? Because of the pastor not allowing himself to receive help or counsel. He even was quoted saying, "I can't receive mentorship from anyone who has a smaller church than me," and it was like, okay, that's kind of problematic. You know, it's like it's a problem. You know. But yeah, as we were talking about how we're dust in his without him, and how like we need to be dependent upon him. Something I have been thinking about over the last, it popped in my head a couple of years ago, and I just like to go back on it. It's fun. Is to think about how all of reality only exists because God chooses to think about it.
Yes, I literally think about that all the time.
Like God is we only are alive because God is actively.
If he ever stopped thinking about us, we would cease to exist.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Like, and well, then you have to ask yourself, does God think? Like philosophically, and I was like,
okay.
Does God think? Well, I don't know. Thinking requires
save that for the next
effort.
episode.
Does God have effort? Who knows? But yeah, the aspect like your existence only is dependent so much as God is paying attention to you. So if you're alive, that means you have the attention of God. So it must mean something for your value.
Yes. Have you ever, you know who Callie Heidegenthal is?
No, that's a tongue twister of a name.
Yes, she just goes by Callie now. She's the one who wrote...
That's a good idea.
She's the one who sings Ever Be Your Praise Will Ever Be and Alabaster Heart.
I don't know Alabaster Heart.
All my love, you
I know,
can have it all. You've definitely been in the room where we sang that.
Okay.
Let it rise like it. Whatever. Anyway, she's amazing, and
I know Everbeat. So.
Okay, yeah, she's got some heavy hitters, but she's awesome. I had coffee with her one time, and she was talking about how the Lord had been speaking to her. I'm probably gonna butcher this, but that she was like wrestling through this concept of like, you know, this like humility but not bridging into false humility, and this confidence but not arrogance, and like how do I manage this, and like how do I receive a compliment and affirmation without, you know, building myself up to something that I'm not. And she started asking the Lord for language for that, and she felt the Father speak over her, "You're not so little one." And just this like weird reality of like, you know, and she said, something else was like, in the context of David, like, you'll never be more than a shepherd boy, but you'll never be less than a king. And this reality of like, I'm dust without him, and yet with him, look at all this, you know what I mean? Like how empowered I am to live in this amazing, like, you know, and it's like, without him, I am a filthy sinner, and yet I have him, and so I'm redeemed, and I'm resurrected in new life, and just this reality of like the glorious resurrection that we've had with Jesus, and yet without him, it's not, you know, it's like just such a weird reality to be in, where it's like actually, I was talking to Allie about this years ago, and we had this conversation where we talked about how it's like, the more you understand your insignificance, the greater you understand your significance. Because it's like, if I am such a small little piece of dust, and yet the creator of the universe will hold me in the palm of his hand and think of me, and that his thoughts for me outnumber the stars. Like,
and is in you,
and I am his home? Like, what? Yeah. And that's even like the same, going back to that same song, like, Where I Belong. That's literally what the chorus is about. Like, you hold my life in the palm of your hand, yet somehow you're such an awesome God. I'm so in awe of all that you are. those aren't the words. Such a mighty God. I'm so in awe of all that you are. So I'll stay right here. This is where I belong. Where it's just this like, it's literally about that. Where it's like, you're the one who hangs the stars. You're the one who spoke the earth into motion.
Yeah.
You saw nothing. You spoke into nothing and created everything.
Yeah.
And yet you're like, hey, you're my best friend. Hey, I love you with my whole. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what? You know,
Have
it's
you
crazy.
heard of Where Were You by Ghost Ships?
Yes.
Yeah,
Good
and
one.
so for you listeners, it basically like is the artist is question or
You can
God
sing it.
is what's that?
You sing it.
I can sing it. Yeah, I'm like the worst singer here.
Come on.
Easily.
Come on, give us a show.
Absolutely not.
Come on.
But yeah, it's the singer is questioning God and all these things, and then God's questioning back. It's taken from Job, I think 48 or 38, where God is talking to Job, and he's like, "Where were you when I hung the stars? When I?" He's like, "Do you feed the lions?
Yeah.
Do you do this? Do you do this?" And the very end, it says, "I had no right to ask, but still my God knelt and answered me."
Oh, yeah,
And like
I love
the
that
imagery
line.
of God kneeling
Yes.
answering, it's like, well, one, that makes him a lot bigger than us if he has to kneel to get on our level.
Yes.
And then it's like the gentleness of kneeling and the
Yes.
closeness of that. And it's like, when I first heard this song, I was like, this is going to make me emotional a lot.
Yeah. Okay, I actually, I love children's Bibles. I love them. I love them so much because I think like the simplicity of just like, it's just the main points of each of the things. And it's like not overcomplicated. And it just brings such imagery and like, oh, I love reading through it. So, in like the Jesus, just like the classic children's, the most common one is like the Jesus Storybook Bible.
Right.
Is it the whole Bible, Genesis to Revelation?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I want to
It's
read those
amazing.
really gnarly parts about like,
Well, I
When the-
mean,
like-
it's not like every
like
single
Judges?
chapter.
I'm
Okay?
reading
It's not like
Judges.
every it's like
It's not in there.
it's not in there.
Or-
It's not every story in the Bible, but it's
Like-
like a lot. I don't only read the. I
Right,
also
right,
read
right,
a
no.
real Bible.
what's the
It's
I only teach
supplementary.
from the Children's Story Bible.
I
Our
actually
main
have
study
preached
Bible.
several times from the children's Bible, and
That's
I'm
awesome.
no shame about it.
Yeah,
And I have
so
many different versions too.
what's the, you know how Paul says that, like, talking about like false teachers who are leading people astray, and he's like, and intentionally, he's like, I wish they would even mutilate themselves. What's the kid version of that? I wish
Okay.
they would go in timeout, you know.
Shh, don't ruin this for me, okay?
Okay.
It's just it's it's still beautiful. But anyways, the creation story in children's Bibles, it wrecks me every time. The Jesus Storybook one, oh my gosh, I will never get over it. I've probably read through that like 100 times at least. Like I get so rocked because it's just so beautiful. Like I feel like we get in such a, I love theology and I love looking at like, you know, the reality of things and looking through like even like the science of the stuff and like the possible and all that stuff. But like just clean slate, looking at it from like this childlike perspective of like, I just believe every word that my father says, and like looking through a story in that way is so beautiful. And just imagining these what if questions, like what do you mean you just spoke?
Yeah.
Like what did that sound like? What did that look like? What did that, you know? And it's a lot of like, that's a lot of how I process scripture, is like questions that I'll never have answered on this side of eternity in a solid way that I could like, you know, put my stake in the ground. Like things I won't preach on, but things like that I'm curious about and that I have a relationship with the Holy Spirit so I can ask about. And so I started processing through the creation story because I was going to do that with the whole Bible and I got stuck in the creation story. And there's just so much in there. And I as I did that, I just asked the Holy Spirit, just as a personal thing, I just really wanted imagery for that. I wanted something I could hold on to. And I don't know if it's like totally accurate or not, but it just made it come alive so much for me. And I just saw this depiction of just like, whoa, like the vulnerability and insanity of like this pure and spotless father, like this, oh my stomach is growling, this like pure and spotless, like holy righteous king, and this like, you know, white radiant holiness that came down and not like that he just spoke to everything else. That like he stayed on his throne, just spoke to everything else, and like, and that's how it happened. And then to make us, that he came and like knelt on the ground in the dirt. And he formed this like self-portrait. He wanted something that looked like him, and I even imagine like the dirt under his fingernails that it would have taken to do that. Like that he would form Adam like with, his, you know, and that, oh my gosh! And I just imagine like all of creation just being like, whoa, like that's God, you know, and like how crazy that is. And it's just so wild, and that he would breathe his own breath into us. That's crazy. And he gave him one rule: don't eat it. And they're like, no,
I need it. Are you sure about that? It looks pretty tasty.
Yeah. Anyways, I love thinking about that though, like how wide the significance of that. But
yeah, and something that is really exciting about the creation story that I realized when I was doing my BCC is we were charting through it, and I was, you know, doing the whole process of reading scripture, observing the different parts of it, and so a lot of people have a picture of an angry God at sin, right? You know, probably because there's that famous book or a sermon, A Sinner in the Hand of an Angry God, right? Never read it, heard a lot of good things about it. I'm sure it's helped people, I'm sure it's hurt people, like all human institutions and functions. But you see the very first moment humanity sins, right? This is a big deal. You know, this is a huge deal. Humanity's never experienced sin. You would think you expect the first reaction to be the template how the rest of the reactions will be. You know, like if your first encounter with a cop kind of sets how you expect every cop to treat you, right? So the first time you are seeing God confront sin, you're expecting it to be something where you're like, okay, this should be harsh. This should be like swift and fast and execute judgment and let them know how serious it was. And the narrative goes that it says God came in the cool of the morning.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa, wait a second. Think about the cool of the morning. You wake up and you go on a walk in the cool of the morning, you make coffee, you spend time with the Lord, and there's like a sweetness, a stillness to the morning where nothing's awake yet. You know, the deer might be out. I'm from the country, so you can look outside and see the deer. And the deer are out, and it's quaint, it's quiet, still, it's peaceful. And that's when God comes to them and says, hey, who told you that or where are you? Why did you answer me? Like, you know, like the sweetness of God to confront sin with us feeble creatures in just a gentle way. And then you see later how serious he takes sin when he is like, he's like, hey, this is the consequence. You have to be executed, or not, you have to be exiled from this oasis, from this paradise that I created from you, and you will die.
So crazy, like his response, and even like reading through in that children's book passage, it like describes, like, I love the imagery that they use, and again, it's like reading between the lines of like emotion and things, so it's like, again, not gonna like stake something in the ground of like, this is what happened, you know, it's a children's Bible, but I love the way that they depict the father of just being grieved, of like, he's heartbroken that they would do something that would cause distance between them, you know, it's like, he's a dad that wants to be with his kids, and they broke his heart, you know, and that now they can't be close, and thinking of that perspective where it's like, when we mess up, I expect to be yelled at, and I expect to be slapped upside the head and like, do better, like, you better work harder and do better, you know, and to think that like, he's actually just grieved because he likes to be close to me, you know, that he just wants fullness for me, he wants health for me, he wants life for me, he wants, you know, for Jesus to receive the full reward of his suffering through me, you know, and that I would live in light of the fullness of the blood of Jesus in my life, so just has changed my perspective a lot, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Solved all the world's problems.
And I've really enjoyed a lot of what you've been sharing, and I think everyone else has too, listening.
Everyone else. All of you.
You on the camera and the audio. Once again, thanks for coming on the show. It's been a great time.
What an honor. Aww. So
before we officially wrap up, though, we do have to ask you a question.
Missed this last time.
Which might be okay, because last week we interviewed a doctor, from a PhD doctor from Minneapolis, so we thought he would have enjoyed this question, but we forgot. What is the biggest predator animal you could take on with a melee weapon of your choice in a gladiator arena?
A what weapon?
A melee weapon. Any handheld weapon.
Handheld weapon.
No
Not
guns.
A gun.
No guns, no bow and arrows.
No projectile.
I know nothing about fighting with weapons.
It's okay.
Swords, axes,
spears.
That is such a specific question. I get too invested in hypotheticals, and I overthink them a lot because I really feel like I'm there doing it. So
yeah.
Huffle.
So I'll tell you mine so you can get an example.
It's a chainsaw's a melee weapon.
Chainsaw?
That's cheating. Because it's powered.
It's melee, but it's
melee.
motor.
I think we gotta refine the question a little more.
Medieval melee.
Pre-modern. Yeah.
Okay, I
Pretty
don't
modern
know
melee.
that at all. So,
Okay. Anyways, I used to say, and I don't know what I would change it to. I said I could take down a hyena with a dagger, like this big of a sword. I since then have
I
watched
think you
videos
do
of.
more than that.
Do you know how vicious hyenas are?
They're small.
They kill each other when they're born.
I
feel
know.
like
They
I have-
grow.
But you are
You
not a
need
hyena.
Joel Osteen
You have
affirmation right now to know that you
Yeah,
have.
you
You
do.
have
Yeah,
the
you
blood
do.
of a
Yeah,
witch.
you do.
Yes.
So maybe I could take a youth hyena, but like
full-grown
hyenas-
hyena, no problem.
Bro, full-grown hyenas still stand like waist height on all fours.
No problem.
Here I am
Like, that's a
thinking
big
like
dog.
I
That's
can take on a bear.
You can't take
There's
on a
literally
bear.
no way
I
you can
literally
do it.
can.
You
No,
can't.
I am so overconfident. I
What
think,
weapon are you killing a bear with?
Please tell me.
like I
Throwing
think
stars?
just like any kind of weapon, you know.
Any kind of weapon.
Like I
Pocket
just
knife,
feel really
Swiss Army
confident.
knife.
I feel no fear of bears, and I'm from Colorado, so I feel like I should have a healthy fear of
Well, good
bears.
thing you don't live in
I
Colorado
really,
anymore.
really don't. I don't fear them.
You've
But
I don't know.
you've never
you're
encountered.
in a
I've
gladiator arena,
literally
and it's
been
gonna
so
kill
close
you.
to so many bears, and I just feel like
I want you to know they're
That's some-
genuine
some bears.
monsters.
In this situation, they're trying to kill you, and
like
you're
they're
trying to kill
okay.
it.
Is
It's
this
a
situation, like,
hungry
they're
mama
running
bear.
at me.
It's a hungry mama bear,
Yeah.
and it thinks that you just killed her cub.
You know what? I just think I could do it.
With what
A
weapon?
sword.
I'm proud of you.
How big of a sword?
One that I can hold.
Okay, that's a fair answer.
Or like one of those I'm trying to
Spiky
pull.
balls on the machine.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. You can only get one
I'm
shot
trying to
though.
pull from all the references of the things I've seen on my brother's like
Yeah.
Dungeons
Yeah.
and Dragons stuff.
Yeah,
you know?
okay.
Like
So yeah,
I don't know. That's not my wheelhouse.
Derry
so-
thinks he can
You're gonna
take.
die, but
Okay.
it'll be fun to watch.
What did you say again? You said a
I don't remember what I
a
said.
small cat with a sword, a big sword though.
I said like the mountain lion, panther,
Yeah.
that kind of
Yeah.
a cat.
You can
with
take
a-
that's a pretty small.
I think you can
with
do
a
it.
broadsword.
Okay, I want you to know.
Yes, you can do it. I think you need
Here's
to
the-
believe in yourself.
I could probably take on a cat. I'll still say hyena.
I think
with
you
sword.
need to believe in yourself.
Okay, sure. I think of all three of us might know how serious animals are scary. More.
Okay.
I don't
My
know,
dad's
guys.
a veterinarian.
You grew up in Detroit.
So,
I
I
watched a
grew
lot
up
of-
on farms. So
I watch a lot of Discovery Channel, and I follow
Okay.
Nature is Metal. Anyways, so my fiance's
I'm
brother.
gonna call Dr. Paul Morley right now and hey Dad,
Could I take down a bear?
I think it's a yeah.
No. He'd be like.
Anything you want, sweetie.
Yeah. So Laura's brothers for Christmas got Scottish claymores for Christmas. If you don't know what that is, that's a massive broadsword.
Yeah.
That's like probably a 5 foot blade, and that has a handle, and then the crossbar, and then more of a handle, so you can swing it. You can't swing that fast and take down a cat.
Not trying to
I
swing
held
it.
it. You're just gonna hold it.
Yeah.
It's
And impale itself.
no. There's
Cat.
Why?
cats are so much quicker, guys.
Have you ever in your life seen a cat attack
I
something?
It's
got-
gonna
I got
run.
this.
Let me know if
It's
it's
gonna-
ever done a zigzaggy move, because
Okay,
they don't do
I will
those.
find the video and send it to you.
Wow, this is so serious. This is getting really heated.
I just think Derry's way too confident in the size.
I think you're not confident enough.
Exactly.
No,
Exactly.
I think you
I
can
said
do it.
hyena. Hyena might be more dangerous than
No,
his
not
cat.
even kind of. Not even a little bit.
Dogs
I
are
think
more
I could
vicious than
take
cats
down a
now.
tiger. I watch all of Tiger
you
King,
can't.
both
You can't.
seasons.
No.
You
I
can't.
literally can. I have seen Joe Exotic take it down.
With a gun.
You want
No, he'll kick that sucker right off.
Alright.
I think
you
I
want to
can
know
do
a
it.
scientific fact about tigers?
Yeah,
Their play force of hitting a ball for fun is capable of decapitating a human.
yeah, I'm sure. But I have the power of God in me.
I have the DNA of a winner.
If you start the podcast off like this, you can't then try to like disarm me in my bear arguments.
The point about the Joel Osteen box is that a lot of what he says is fluff. And
It's really funny.
Yeah.
You know what though? Frosting is my favorite part of the cake.
Ooh, not
Yeah?
mine.
That's a bad.
I get tired of eating frosting. I need more than just frosting, but I do like some fluff. Not in my
Frosting has some
preaching,
poison in it.
But
Not
just
preaching.
in life, like I like to be affirmed. Words of affirmation. Tell me why you like me as a person, and I will explode with love. So
All right.
you know, that's like I literally will tell people. I go tell my friends. I'm like, tell me 5 things you like about me.
Actually, one time,
I
this
literally
was
did.
years ago, I was back home. This is probably before I came with staff. I remember I was texting you one time, and you were like, yeah, I literally ask God every day 10 things he thinks about me. And I thought to
I
myself,
did have a season
in the
of that.
moment, I thought,
I
I was like, I think I told you this. I was like, why on earth would you do that? You can just read the Bible and see how much God loves you. Like, I don't understand why you had to ask the Holy
Because we're
Spirit.
different.
But yeah, and I've grown since then. Okay.
Wow.
But
Happy for you. Proud of you.
but I remember that, and then you're like, you should try sometime. And I thought to myself, absolutely not. And I was walking
And
into
then
the
you
backyard.
did it.
I was walking in my backyard with my dog in the cool of the morning, pre-winter, so it's like
Wow.
nice and cold. And I had my hot
Yes.
coffee. It was great. And God's like, you should do it. And I was like, don't tell me that.
Boom.
And he's like, you should
Roasted.
ask me 10 things. I was like, I can't sin. So, sure.
I
But
can't sin.
Yeah, because if I disobey God and don't do it, it's sin.
Oh,
Because
okay.
He told me to do it.
It's a
Yeah.
direct command. He's like,
I was
you're
like,
going to hell if you don't do it.
well, I just think like, you know to do something.
Yeah,
right.
but obedience is good anyway.
But I did it, and he actually spoke some really amazing things that were really sweet to me.
See?
I was like, oh.
It's literally like
And
rewired.
then I was upset because I had to text you and tell you about it, and I was like, this sucks.
Don't you laugh when I'm right? Yes. It's just like it's literally changed the way because I normally like my brain, my logic is always in the driver's seat of like I logic my way out of emotions. I'm not a naturally emotional person. I am very logical. I'm like that doesn't make sense, so I'm not gonna feel it. Sad doesn't make sense, so no. That's a no for me.
Sad, not fun.
And I've literally
no
like the
attention.
last few years have literally been learning like God's value for emotion, and
Yeah.
I'm like, not what I prefer.
You're like, God, can't you just
So it's
make
like
me
things
a
like
theologian?
that. Yeah, it's like things like that where I'm like, that's like how I've learned like this not new to me side of the Lord, where it's like, no, He's actually the most emotional in all of history. Like He made emotions.
Yeah.
He did that. He's better at everybody at anything. You know, He's better at emotions than we all are. You know, so I have had to learn that. Not to be led by emotions, to be led by God, obviously, but
Learn how to have healthy emotions, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
a wild concept to me. I'm learning, you know. I cry sometimes now. Whoa,
Amazing.
whoa.
It's good.
I teared up today.
Big steps.
Whoa.
Doing
look
the
at
podcast?
me.
Wow.
No, but earlier in my living room.
In anticipation for coming on the show.
Yes, I was like,
Yeah.
I just can't believe they wanted me back.
Yes. Anyways,
But yeah, so once again,
Bear.
thanks for coming. Bear with a mace, a chained
is that what
mace.
it's called? A mace?
Well, a mace is the thing that just
Yeah.
has a spiky ball, but if you put a chain on it,
Imagine I
Chain
had
mace.
two and they were really big.
you can't swing
Oh,
it.
I don't think it's
Yeah, I do not.
Those things are like
Listen,
40
my friends call me
pounds.
Muscles Morley.
I don't
am
care what they
very
call-
surprisingly strong.
I don't necessarily doubt that. I'm just saying, swinging those things, and if you miss, you are not quick enough to recover that. And
And now I'd be with Jesus, so it's a win-win. I would still win. Like, there's literally no losing in this battle.
you're gonna show up before God, and He's like, "You were wrong. You should have said like a."
No, he'd be like, welcome home, my beloved. Thank you for fighting about it. He said, you have the DNA of a winner. Look where it got you.
Fist
Heaven.
bump.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he'd be like, now I'm sending you back, and I'm resurrected. Transcended. Okay, enough.
Behind the bear.
Behind the bear.
Behind the
With a
bear.
gun.
Choke the
I'm
bear
taking-
with my mace.
I'm taking a bear with those with a multi-tool knife. I have to, unfold it, pull it out, fold it back.
You could do it.
I'm just gonna. No, they have really thick hide.
I don't believe in you.
I don't believe in that either.
I believe in you.
Have you ever watched the series of survival show called Alone? They basically survive alone for as long as they can to win $1 million.
I probably could have like educatedly guessed that from
Yeah.
the title.
Well,
Alone.
yeah. But this guy
You watched
saw.
a survival show called Alone? It's where they go and survive alone.
This guy saw a huge musk ox, and he shot at the bow and arrow and then tracked it down, and it was just sitting there bleeding, and so he kept running by and had to stab it and keep running and stab and keep running, and ended up killing it, and it ended up helping him win the show. Spoilers
crazy.
if you haven't seen that season, but
Yeah.
So sad and cruel
Crazy.
at the same
Yeah.
time.
He looked like
I don't know how to feel.
800 pounds of meat total back.
Okay. Wow.
Super cool.
Survival.
He could probably take a bear. None of us.
I think I could take a bear.
Okay. Anyways, well, we got to wrap up the show. Thank you for
Yes.
coming on. Thank you guys for listening. Be on the lookout for Rachel's third album, live album.
Whoa!
Really
You heard it
exciting.
here first. Literally.
Literally.
You
Well-
want what's the name of your first album? Or your second album? We never even said that, did we?
My second
The
album.
second album is Ever
Every
Drop.
Drop.
Never dropped.
And then
There
the
you go.
third album,
Don't have the
Is-
title yet.
Rachel Morley Live. Muscles Morley live.
Muscles Morley live.
Nice.
The first song is "I Can Take a Bear."
Yes.
Nice.
Winner of a DNA, or Winner's DNA is
Yes.
the second song.
Yeah. Honestly, I'd listen.
We're working on a fifth album right now.
Woo!
Fourth album.
Here we
Wow.
go. Yes.
Yeah. All right, guys, have a great week. Come back next week. We got more guests come on. It's gonna be a great time. See ya.
Adios.